I see it's foggy where you are, Kurt. It's as foggy for you as it is for me in San Francisco.
Yep.
Okay. We aren't hearing anything. No.
Okay, so the motion was by Jacob, second by Christensen, for approve the agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Vote with the agenda as printed. I need a motion for approval of minutes from the 12th, 20.
I'll move approval of the minutes as presented.
Motion by Renard, do I have a second? Second by Supervisor David. Any discussions, subtractions, additions, changes? Anybody see it? Not? All in favor of approval of the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? None, the minutes are approved. Communications.
And the first one we have is the treasurer's monthly report, which was a light gray sheet of paper. If it isn't on your desk, they were set back on the table. And then notice of zoning committee, public hearing, which is June 18th, starts at 7 p.m. And then lastly are some appointments by our county board chair.
Appointed by county board chair, appointments of commissions, these are other bodies. I, Steve Hess, chair of the county board of supervisors, Jefferson County, Wisconsin, as a appointing authority, hereby appoint Benjamin Waymeyer to the joint review board for TIDS and TIPS. And also as chair of the county board of supervisors of Jefferson County, Wisconsin, appointing authority, hereby appoint J. Blair Ward as alternate to the joint review board for TIDS and TIPS. And I, Stephen Hess, chair of the Jefferson County board of supervisors, Jefferson County, Wisconsin, as appointing authority, hereby appoint Mark DeVries as an alternate to the joint review board of TIDS and TIPS, effective this day. Public hearings. So at this point, we'll open the floor for public hearing on a map amendment for the town of Oakland to the Jefferson County Comprehensive Plan and Farmland Preservation Plan. Is there anybody here who would like to speak? Oh. We need a motion to open a public hearing. So moved. Moved by Supervisor Davis, second by Supervisor Johns. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Anyone here would like to speak concerning this plan amendment for the town of Oakland, Jefferson County Comprehensive Plan and Farmland? Come up to a mic then. Please. And just identify yourself for all that are watching on TV and in the crowd here.
My name is Ted Bratney. I'm a town supervisor with the town of Oakland. We requested this after we determined that the town of Oakland had reached the criteria where we were able to look at creating some lots in a subdivision of more than 5 lots back in 2018. We started looking at what was available in our urban service area, which is our growth area. We found that we have three parcels along Highway 18 owned by John Gideon. And he would be amenable to talking about development on those. As we looked at the county's map versus our smart growth map, we determined that one of those parcels was in our smart growth and was marked in the county's 15-year growth plan. The remaining 2 parcels were marked in ag preservation land and were not included in the county's plan. And after some discussions with planning and zoning, our town board back in January sent a resolution to the county asking for them to adjust their zoning map and include the 2 remaining parcels in the 15-year growth plan, which would bring it into line with the town's smart growth plan. At this point, there is no plan for development. This would allow us to enter into discussions and talk about whether this property would be capable of being developed and if it would meet the needs of the town going into the future.
Yeah, if you have any questions for Oakland Town Supervisor.
How many acres are involved?
All total, it's about 60. Some of it is right now R2. Some of it is AT agricultural transition. The rest is currently A1.
Any other questions? Any other questions? You're done. If you do look, Supervisor Johnson, there is a map at the end of your agenda that has the acres parcel in there. Anyone else to speak? Anyone else to speak? Anyone else? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Richard Schultz, Supervisor Schultz, and second was by Supervisor Christensen to close the public hearing. Thank you. This is to item number 9. Let's vote to, we have to have a vote to close. All in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. A special order of business, 2019 audit presentation, Clifton Larson Allen. Click on our screen up front here.
Hello, this is Jake Linnell. Can you hear me okay?
No.
Can you talk a little louder, Jake?
Yeah, let me try to get a little closer to the mic as well. Is this better?
Yes, thank you.
All right. And I see Terry is pulling up our presentation here. We went through this with the Finance Committee just this morning, actually. And so I just wanted to spend just a couple minutes here kind of providing you some of the highlights from what we discussed this morning, and also just open up to any questions that you may have. So very briefly, the agenda for tonight is really just to introduce or reintroduce you to CLA. It's been about 5 years since we've worked with Jefferson County. So just want to give you a little bit of background on the group that's working with you for the audit, as well as give you the results of 2019's financial statement audit, and then just talk a little bit about some of the things that we're working with your team on in terms of understanding what types of things they're managing as they go through the current environment. So on the next slide, a little background on CLA as a whole. CLA is, I'm not going to read all these different statistics here, but really what I want this group to understand is that we work heavily within the municipal market. We work with over half of the counties in Wisconsin. And the reason I want to share that with this group here is that as you're working through some of the different things that you have, the challenges that you have going forward, and you know, are looking for some of that sort of benchmark or best practice type information, we want you to know that we're available to you as a resource. We encourage that dialogue. We've had some really good discussions with your management team, as well as your finance committee and your finance committee chair as well. You know, just talking through some of the things that that you're experiencing, as well as planning for the future. And as we become better service providers by receiving some of the information that that you're sharing, we also want to share any info that we've learned from working with other communities as well. So just very briefly on your service team as it relates to the individuals on the audit. The next slide has some information about myself, as well as my manager on the engagement, Jordan Boehm. So both of us have been working in the governmental space our entire careers, working through audits similar to what we've done here with Jefferson County, but also with outsourced accounting services and consulting and budgeting, various professional services that as you need them, be aware that we've got resources for you, or really just to be as a sounding board as you're going through different things. Then real briefly, I just wanted to touch on the actual audit results as it relates to 2019's audit. And I won't go through it in these things in as much detail as with the Finance Committee, because really the message to take away from this is that this was a very, very clean audit. You see that we have what's called an unmodified opinion within the financial statement audit. That's commonly referred to as a clean opinion. That's the highest level of assurance that we as your auditors can provide you, that the financial statements prepared by your management team are appropriately stated and free of any material misstatement. So that's good. That's kind of that clean opinion as we discussed. The rest of the information included here within the slides gets into some of the more detailed topics that we talked at a more detailed level within the Finance Committee. And I thought I would just kind of highlight them more at a high level, and just see if there's any questions then at the end as well. recognizing that this is a little bit of a challenging environment here with the Zoom meeting to really see if there's any hands raised. So I will make sure to circle with this group if there is any questions at the end. I also don't quite have the same kind of skill set as some of your board members here because I wasn't able to change my background to a nice scenic view like Mary or Kirk, but all you see is my boring back office space. So, but we'll just kind of try to highlight a couple of these things here. As it relates to accounting policies and estimates, the one takeaway I would have for you here is that we do review all of the sort of sensitive matters in terms of determining estimates or utilizing judgment as it relates to those financial statement numbers. And as we work through the policies and estimates that your team has put into place, we had no recommended changes to the methodologies that they were doing as we looked at the assumptions that they were using and the history that backed up those assumptions. We agreed with the methodologies that they had in place. So on the next slide, I'll take you through just a little bit more information on those topics. Again, anytime you see the no's here, those are all good things because it's really saying that as we reviewed this information, we did not find things to report to you as it relates to changes or disagreements or anything like that. So the one area that I did want to highlight in particular here, and I spent some time with the finance committee on this as well, relates to the fact that you had no uncorrected misstatements and no corrected misstatements. So really what that means is we performed our audit work. We did not come across anything that we felt needed to be updated or changed in relation to the financial information that you had prepared for your management team had prepared for the audit. So that's a strong signal to the financial integrity of the information that you are receiving throughout the year and the information that you're making decisions based on. That information is consistent with then what we see as an independent third party and review and validate as well. So that is a strong testament to the work that your management team there is doing on those financial pieces of information. The next section focuses again on other matters to report to you. Again, no disagreements with management, no consultations over anything with other accountants related to the work that we're doing. The bulk of the letter that's included within our financial statement disclosures, and this is actually on the next slide, is the management representation letter. And that is a letter that your management team provides saying that they accept responsibility for those financial statements and that they've provided us, your auditors, with everything that they're aware of that would be relevant to the audit process as well. And those financial statements are complete and accurate in their mind as well. So that really takes us through the deliverables that are a result of the financial statement audit. What I thought I would just spend a brief moment on here next is really more focused on the current environment. And you'll see that on the next slide. Actually, if you jump 2 slides, we can jump into some of the challenges, obviously, that you're seeing with COVID-19. I won't read through these individually, but it is really widespread in terms of the financial implications as well as the operational issues that you as a county government in Wisconsin have been wrestling with. And what I will say is, as your first year auditors here, or I should say returning auditors, we were moving through this audit process for the first time in 5 years with you again. And a lot has changed. And, we were able to achieve that through primarily a remote audit approach. And your staff was really able to pivot and embrace that very quickly and allow us to keep working through our work rather efficiently. So, that's just kind of one example of one of the many different ways in which the current environment has really required you to be nimble and flexible and quick and really pivot. And so, I think round 2 of the challenges here is really focused on some of the grant funding that is available or will be available for the different types of costs that you've incurred related to that. And we've been in discussion with your management team on that as well, ensuring that they're in the loop, and they're very, very proactive on identifying those dollars, being ready to apply when applicable, and really tracking the costs that are going into this. So a lot of what you're seeing with the legislation is, you know, the activities occur, and what you need to do needs to happen, and then the grant funding is kind of chasing it, and then the grant rules are kind of chasing the funding. And so just being as diligent as you can in terms of tracking the costs and being prepared to provide support for the types of costs that you've incurred is very important, and your management team has recognized that very early. So you're very well prepared to respond to that. Also, we did talk at the finance committee level on the next page of just some of the new accounting standards that are coming up. You know, with COVID-19, a lot of the standards actually got delayed in terms of implementation. The reporting standards are kind of giving people a little bit more time to try to get things in order, as they recognize that a lot of their day job is not spent on what their normal day activities had been. So there are some delays in how these accounting standards are applying. But again, your management team is very much upfront and ready to go, and is evaluating the impact of these as they occur. And so with that, I thought I would just pause and see what kind of questions there may be. I know that was a pretty high level, but that was really by design, and that a lot of the, as I said, a lot of the information that we received, very consistent with what we were expecting to see for the county, very well supported. And so, you know, the kind of the old and boring and no news is good news kind of rapport with an audit is holding true here as well. So, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Any questions for our auditor? Any questions from the board for our auditor? Anybody online? Thank you very much for the presentation, Jake.
All right, thank you.
We're doing it twice today.
I'm getting good at this one. All right, thank you much.
Thank you. Move on to item 10, public comment. Anybody here for public comment? Anybody here for public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to our committee reports, resolutions, and ordinances. Board of Health. Kirk, you're Chair of Board of Health. You want to present this one? If you can't, I did discuss that with Supervisor Schultz. You can do it as well.
No, I can do it.
Okay.
So ordinance number 2020.
3.
Powers and duties of County Health Officer, previously known as the Communicable Disease Ordinance. Well, there's no executive summary to read, so I'm trusting that everyone has read this and will register their questions in the discussion. I move for passage as printed.
Do I have a second? Second by Supervisor Johns. Any discussion concerning this ordinance? Supervisor Kennard has his hands up. I saw Supervisor Kennard's hand first. And I believe it was Supervisor Brogdon and Supervisor Morris who had a hand up. And Supervisor. What are you doing there, Mr. Kennard?
No problem. But my question is, is it working now? Okay. Question question is, what are the changes to the previous ordinance? What's the driving force behind the revision, I guess?
Mr. Chair, Joe can handle that one. And then Gail Scott is also on here. So we did not have the authority of the local health officer on the books related to that. And so there's been across the state, as we looked at the Supreme Court ruling and analysis behind it, is looking at the legislative intent of the local body. And it doesn't align then with the intent of what the statute is stating there. And so what counties and communities are looking at right now is looking at development and the best practices, working with their local legislature, what in this case is the county board, to review the rules and regulations that are embodied within the statute as well. And should that move forward with the local health officer?
So this would allow the health officer to put a stay-at-home on for a period of time, and looks like there's a forfeiture, fine, 30 days in jail, those type of enforcement mechanism.
Those enforcement things are in there based on what the state statute currently says.
I believe it was Supervisor Roger, next to Supervisor Morris, and Supervisor Black. Supervisor Davis.
Thank you for your time. This is the third time I've seen this, and each time I've had questions and concerns, and each time they have been great at answering and updating the document. It has been improved vastly, but I still have concerns about this particular document, and that was confirmed this afternoon when one of our elected officials on the state level called and asked me questions about it. So Ben and I have had numerous conversations about this, trying to get this all settled out. So I called Kyle Christensen at the Wisconsin Counties Association this afternoon, and we talked for a little while. They are in the process of putting a group together of health officials, WCA officials, elected officials, the different corporation councils, as well as the towns and municipalities organizations as well, to come up with either a template or things that they feel that are very important. I know some of the other counties around the state have taken this up. I do know that it's gone both directions. Just a little less than an hour ago, Walworth County voted it down 10-1, but I do, Marinette County has delayed it as well. I know that Door County has passed it, and there's some others. And because of all those questions and concerns, I'm making a motion that we postpone this ordinance to the next meeting till we hear from the Wisconsin Counties Association and a little more data on this.
We have a motion to postpone in a second. From the floor, I would like to know if those people who made a motion would mind if the other people ask their questions first before it was taken off.
We have to discuss the motion to postpone.
Yes. So we have a motion to postpone. Any discussion on that? Supervisor Morris.
Thank you. By the way, did everybody see Supervisor Mass catch the speaker there? You should let the record show that that was pretty swift. Yeah, he's got it. So I'm sure everybody knows that. I like this ordinance, and I like Gail Scott. And if Gail Scott were going to be the public health officer for the next 1,000 years, I'd say, let's go for it. Because I think we would all say we were very blessed to have her during this time. And, but we all know that we won't have Gail Scott. And that's too bad. There are several things about this ordinance that I like. I like that it's defined communicable disease. Is really what it's talking about is what happens when there's a communicable disease. It doesn't really go beyond communicable diseases. And it does try to specify the difference between an outbreak, an epidemic, and a pandemic. Now, one of the challenges about that is, well, an outbreak determined by who? An epidemic determined by who? and a pandemic determined by who? Well, the World Health Organization does do pandemics, I guess. So she's supposed to investigate. It doesn't clarify that she's the one that determines the outbreak or whoever the public health officer is. All right? So I think that's something that needs to be clarified a little better here. It needs to be better clarified. A pandemic isn't going to be investigated and determined by the Jefferson County Public Health Officer. I'm not even sure that the public health officer in a county can identify something as an epidemic. So I think that's a concern as well. I'm not sure that that's a possibility. I'd like to be sure. The other thing is Supervisor Kennard mentioned 30 days. Well, the only 30 days here is a punishment along with a $500 fine. I guess I would like to see that the communicable disease ordinance maybe matches something like we do with the emergency declaration on the next page. The emergency declaration is something that we are being asked to either reaffirm or reinforce over and over. Part of what happened in the Supreme Court was the debate over what's the window of opportunity. And there's no window of opportunity here. And so I guess my question is, should there be? Should there be? And I would think that's at least something that should be debated. But I'm not sure we are the body to debate that. I'm not saying we don't have intelligent people here. To me, that is a debate that probably should happen somewhere other than us. So maybe the Wisconsin Counties program or maybe on a state level. But I do think it should be tied in some ways so that there's a window. So, communicable diseases might go on and on and on, but they might not. There needs to be a way to say that it's over with. So, like I say, Gail Scott has done a fabulous job, and I like that we want to do this. But I would say, I don't think we are the ones to do this now. I would like to see what the counties offer as a template. I think that's fair. I do agree that we need some sort of ordinance, and I like the fact that we're updating it. I'm not against that at all. But when it came out, I read it and I thought of these concerns. And for that reason, I'm going to vote in favor of postponement.
Any other discussion on the postponement? Supervisor Davis.
Thank you. I have concerns about this ordinance also and couldn't support it in its current form and believe there is a lot of ambiguity about an incredibly complex subject, which I also have misgivings about. So I would support this resolution to send it back to committee to work on it further because I won't support it as is. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else? We have a motion to postpone on the floor. And a second. So we, all in favor of postpone, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Aye. I think we need a roll call.
Supervisor Jones.
Aye.
Supervisor Kelly. Oh. Supervisor David.
Nay.
Wait. We're voting to postpone.
Voting to postpone.
Oh, that's right. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Yes.
Supervisor Brockner,
Yes.
Supervisor Herbst, Supervisor Morris,
Yes.
Supervisor Wieneke,
No.
Supervisor Renard,
No.
Supervisor Zastro,
Yes.
Supervisor Johns,
Yes.
Supervisor Smith,
Yes.
Supervisor Martin, Supervisor Lund,
No.
Supervisor Nass,
No.
Supervisor Payne.
No.
Was that a no?
No.
Thank you. Supervisor Coots,
Yes.
Supervisor White,
Yes.
Supervisor Drana, Supervisor Backlund,
Yes.
Supervisor Kennard,
Yes.
Supervisor Paulson,
Yes.
Supervisor Jacob,
Yes.
Supervisor Wendell,
Yes.
Supervisor Felker,
Yes.
Supervisor Fitzgerald, Supervisor Nealon,
Yes.
Supervisor Schultz,
No.
Supervisor Roberts,
No.
Supervisor Christensen.
No.
Mike Kelly's back now.
Supervisor Kelly, Mike, you're muted.
Supervisor Kelly, you're muted. Supervisor Kelly? Muted. Are you ready to vote? Can you hear me? We will message him quick. Old technology. Anybody want to stand up and sing a song? All right, just let them go. What is our vote tally?
The vote tally has come out 20 yes, 7 no, 2, well, I guess then 3 absent.
The motion passes to postpone the ordinance number 3. On to our next executive committee. Supervisor Renard.
Resolution number 2020. Extension of emergency declaration. On March 13th, 2020, in response to an emerging concern of a public health emergency, then County Board Chair Jim Schrader issued an emergencies declaration. This order has been subsequently ratified and continued as written by the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors on March 19th, April 21, and May 12, 2020. The public health emergency was also impacted by the orderly transfer of one term of the Board of Supervisors to a new term of the Board of Supervisors, which included the need to elect new officers to the board through the required organizational meeting on April 21, 2020. Subsequent to this meeting, appointments of committee assignments and subsequent need to elect leaders of these committees, boards, and commissions were required. As such, the county administrator has been delegated additional authorities under the declaration to maintain the continuity of operations and ensure the protection of the public. The county administrator has reported the actions taken during this declaration to committees to include ratification of said actions. Since the emergency has been declared, the county has developed several systems to respond to the COVID-19 status, along with the process to begin recovery operations externally and internally. These systems have allowed the operations to normalize, and processes are in place to deal with emerging issues. These systems will continue to be enhanced as we work through potential additional dollars the county may receive from the state and federal government as the situation requires. Further, most of the newly formed committees and boards have met or are expected to meet soon, which will facilitate in their role for policy making and guidance. Pending board approval, it is also the intent that the remote attendance policy will be maintained for an indeterminate time, even beyond the declaration. Based on the above conditions, it is being recommended by the executive committee and the county administrator that the county should begin the process to phase down the emergency declaration. With the proposed extension of the declaration before the board this evening, the first phase will remove the authority relegated to extraordinary spending authority and reduce this to normal operational needs. This will not limit the county administrator's authority to further control budget oversight beyond normal operations, nor will it affect the county administrator's authority to make emergency procurements under the county's current purchasing ordinance. The executive committee will continue to review information at future meetings and will consider further reduction of powers for the July board meeting to include potentially ending the declaration. This will include monitoring the requirements of the declaration for funding reimbursement from the state and federal governments. I move approval of this resolution.
Do I have a second? Second by Supervisor Connors. Discussion on this resolution. Yes, go ahead.
It wasn't exactly clear in the executive summary, but the extension that we are voting on tonight would extend the declaration to our next board meeting, July 14th.
Very clear. Discussion. Any discussion? Supervisor David.
I was going to type up this is work. I have both on this might work so I can. Is this better? Can you hear me now? Hear me now. Thank you. I appreciate that. Testing. Sorry.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Actually, this is interesting. I appreciate that. I won't be supporting this ordinance tonight. I supported it last month with some misgivings, and I think there's just too many ambiguities about what is happening in our world, too many odd coincidences, too many conflicts of interest in organizations that are leading lockdowns and quarantines and public policy right now.
there's a lot of consequences to whatever we do, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit. There's a lot of assumptions that this is being based on that I don't necessarily agree with. And this is just an incredibly complex issue. So I was going to type up some notes for everybody today. But someone once said, smart person, make hay while the sun shines. And that's what we did today. We make hay instead of this, and we got our hay in just before it started to rain. So I have a lot of reasons why I'm not going to support this. And please bear with me. I haven't said a lot at the county boards in the past, but this one really bears on my soul. So I need to bring that forward. This whole lockdown and pandemic was based on an empirical model from Great Britain. And it said we were going to have 2 million deaths in the US, and it said Great Britain was going to have 500,000 deaths. And as of a couple of weeks ago, that number was 2,400% off. Granted, deaths have gone up, but it is nowhere near the estimated amount that the lockdowns were initiated based upon. And then as the numbers started to come in, they weren't particularly reliable depending upon where they came from. The testing was all screwed up. The CDC said, we're the only ones that can do tests. And by the way, our tests are screwed up and we won't have some for a month. You know, that really kind of struck me wrong. Also, the CDC, one of the major organizations that are kind of implemented in or implicated in this, should have closed the country down back when we first heard about this. We knew about the virus back in December. I knew about it in December. I knew a lot about it in January. That's when I bought my masks. That's when I was concerned. I brought it up to the county board on the law enforcement committee. You probably remember that. I said, this could be something special. And nobody paid any attention to it, and planes were flying all over the world. And it took a whole month before we decided that we weren't going to allow such travel, and during that time, the virus traveled the world. When we discovered that the figures didn't actually meet the empirical model, the imperial model, which, by the way, you could not confirm that. Neil Ferguson and his group did not release the math and the numbers behind that model for about a month and a half. So we continued on this trajectory with no scientist in the world being able to confirm or not confirm it. Then when the numbers started to come in, our response was to double down with the lockdowns and the quarantines. Another reason I'm against this is the lockdowns failed. The latest evidence coming out of New York is 66% of the people that are showing up at the hospitals were in quarantine. They were in their house. They weren't the ones traveling all over. Let's see. We have countries that didn't lock down, countries like Sweden. There's 3 other ones, I forget what they are. Their numbers aren't completely off the scale. They're similar to, there's 3 tiers of deaths and disease, and they're kind of in the top tier of the middle group. It's not outrageous, it's falling within parameters. They did nothing. What's interesting about that is we initially had the lockdown. Anybody remember the reason for it? It was to lower the curve, right? Flatten the curve. And why was that? That was to give our hospitals the capacity to meet the onrush of people coming in. Well, the onrush really never happened. The hospitals basically shut down their operations. I have family members that weren't able to be treated for serious diseases because we couldn't get to the hospital. People are dying of other diseases because the hospitals are kind of closed down or they're afraid to go to them. So if we lock down and if we stay locked down like this, what's going to happen is come fall time, when the disease actually begins to spike because it seems to be a cool weather disease, we're going to probably face another round of spike in disease and spike in deaths. Meanwhile, places that didn't lock down, like Sweden, they are going to achieve what is known as herd immunity. And there are a couple ways to think about this. You can think about this as germ warfare, where you get the disease and you need to either be treated or die, or you can develop herd immunity. You can catch the cold, you can develop your own herd immunity, and you're going to be fine just the next time it comes around. Or that's what the research and the information that I have been looking at says. When we did the lockdown, that was the wrong way to proceed. We shouldn't be locking down everybody. We shouldn't be telling people stay home, stay, wear your things, don't come within contact. We should be trying to develop herd immunity. The people we should have locked down are the people that actually are dying from the disease. Basically old men. 80% of the people dying are over the age of 6. What's that? Sorry, yeah. I'm 66. I'm in that category too. Those are the people we should have protected. Those are the people we should have actually taken care of, that we should have quarantined. That's how diseases were usually fought. This is completely out of the ordinary. This is one of the ambiguities, the strange things that are happening because of this. In New York City, they have some of the worst rates of death anywhere, but they are also, and the whole American medical system missed the boat on this particular thing. They treated for a respiratory disease. We knew back in 2005 when the first SARS coronavirus came around that it wasn't really a respiratory disease, that it was a blood disease, that it did not allow our blood to take up the oxygen. And so, because we're treating this for a respiratory disease, we put people on intubation. What that means is they give you drugs, drug you into a coma, put a tube down your airway, and pump air into you. And that actually at least 90% of the people that had intubation died. It was the wrong treatment. We were treating for a respiratory disease. We should have been treating for a blood disease. We aggravated that by mandating in New York City that old people with the virus had to be accepted into old folks' home. The most vulnerable places of anybody, and we put 6 people in there. It was like just the wrong thing to do. Meanwhile, either the mayor or the governor banned hydroxychloroquine, which all over the world is showing amazing results, except in the US. And that's kind of troubling to me. Social distancing, masks. Masks are thought to be effective, they're not. Microscopic particles aren't stopped by those masks. They do. Actually, there is legitimate scientific studies demonstrating that it inhibits oxygen, and for people that are oxygen compromised, perhaps because they have a virus that inhibits the oxygen uptake in their blood, this can actually be very bad for them. And anyhow, if we were going to institute the use of masks and social distancing, it should have been before the virus got here, back in early December and into January, but we didn't start doing that. The CDC said up till February that you don't need masks. It's not important. And only 2 more pages and I'll start to skip stuff. We blocked effective treatment. Over 200 studies around the world say hydroxychloroquine works, and there's all sorts of numbers out there demonstrating this, and yet we're not using it. There are other things that work really well against this, like I say, hydroxychloroquine, but also vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc supplements. The CDC, our health institutes, aren't promoting that type of thing. And I think that's because of a capitalistic determination of the protocol used to treat this disease. It's not really about saving lives. Unfortunately, it seems to be more about making money. The doctors in the medical institutions screwed up. We should have learned our lesson from SARS in 2005 that a one-size-fits-all protocol simply does not work for this. somewhere along the line also, we went from, we're gonna lock down and so we can flatten the curve. Now all of a sudden, we're locked down until we find a vaccine. I find that very troubling. Vaccines are plagued with issues. They have their own consequences. They have their own mortalities associated with them. We're skipping the trials. When we talk about vaccines for a couple minutes, recognize that the institute that regulates those, that in 1996, Congress passed a bill, 1986, Congress passed the vaccine bill, which exempted all liability from manufacturers of vaccines. And at the same time, the people manufacturing the vaccines were able to institute within our government mandatory vaccines for children. It's a very profitable business. You don't have liability and you don't have advertising costs. I have a huge problem with that. When you look at world numbers, you're going to find that the U.S. is winning as far as how many people have died. We have supposedly 219,000 deaths, according to Worldometer's info. As of today, world deaths, U.S. deaths, I can't find it, somewhere around 219,000 people. But we are counting people that we know we killed with intubation. When we treated the disease wrong, we should have been putting in hyperbaric oxygen chambers. There's all sorts of protocols we could have done that we didn't. Quarantine, look ahead here. The deaths, how and what is counted, and especially in the U.S., is inaccurate. Hospitals and medical organizations are incentivized very well financially for stamping something a COVID death as opposed to something of a comorbidity where the person probably would have died anyhow. Negation, also coalition. I think I did it to the end. I think in this country we have authoritarian bias. Someone in a position of authority says, this is what it is, and everybody says, okay. And I always question assumptions, and so I don't think that the people in charge of making these decisions they have conflicts of interest, then they're making bad decisions. If you wanted to talk about conspiracy theory, this COVID outbreak is an absolute perfect cover for a crashing economy. Lock everybody up, put them away. Huge opportunity for wealth transfer. How many, when the economy tanked in March, what happened? The Fed jumped in and dumped $2 trillion into the banks and commodity markets. I personally feel this is an impingement on my rights. If you're afraid of the virus, stay home, wear your mask, stay in the basement, but it should not affect how I operate my life. There's a rotten smell about this whole thing, and I'm not going to be supporting things that support the lockdown and the seriousness of this virus, because although people are dying, it's nowhere near as big as it has been made out to be. And therefore, I won't be supporting this ordinance. Thank you for your indulgence. I appreciate it very much.
Amy Renard, and then Supervisor Rogers.
And I feel a whole lot better getting that off my chest. Thank you.
So with all due respect to colleague Supervisor David, this resolution has nothing to do with lockdowns or forcing people to wear masks. It has to do with running county government. That's what it does. It gives our county administrator special powers to deal with expenditures, personnel actions, policies, if and when committees are not around or able to meet. That's all it does. It doesn't enforce lockdowns. It doesn't declare anybody can't go someplace. The state of Wisconsin is not under a lockdown, and neither is Jefferson County. Our health department has issued guidelines for social distancing, wearing of masks, etc. But that's it. This is about keeping county government operating. It's also about maintaining possible eligibility for reimbursement of our expenses related to COVID-19 in the event federal and state dollars are made available. That's what it does. And we could argue about the curve and who's to blame and chloroquine, for hours. But that's not what this is about. Just isn't.
Supervisor Roberts. Supervisor Roberts.
Yes, I am in favor of this because number one, if you've noticed that since the state Supreme Court said that our governor did not have the right to extend the stay at home, we have gone up from like 40 to over 130. People just forgot all about it. So I still think we have to be concerned about our residents, the people of our communities and our county. And by the way, the Sweden minister, I saw a video where he said he made a big mistake. So I think that was a little misleading. I understand where you're coming from, but I still feel that it's important that the county has the right and the right behind them to make a decision about something like this. And I'm over 70, so I'm fine, but there are children and there are people a lot younger than me that are getting COVID-19. And I know a person personally that had it, and luckily he lived, a young man, but I think we still have to protect our people. Thank you.
Simultaneously, Mr. Christensen, Supervisor Christensen first, and then Supervisor Schultz has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to state my agreement with the positions that Supervisor Renard stated. And in addition, I sat in on the Zoom meeting for the Finance Committee this morning. And in that meeting, it was stated that we've already tallied around $500,000 in costs related to the pandemic issue. And if this declaration has some effect on recovering some of those costs, I think we should support our ability to do that by passing this declaration. Thank you.
Supervisor Schultz.
You'll have to excuse me, I'm over 70 also. I have kind of a personal thing here. Despite claims that everything isn't what it said, I have 3 friends who have COVID-19. And it's a reality, it's real. There's an attempt out there by people to make it sound it's not as real. It is. It's in Fort Atkinson where I live. It was mentioned hydroxychloroquine. I just yesterday read an article that says that that's being promoted for profit. And it does not have any effect on COVID-19. So I don't know. I'm not up here arguing it does. This is all fairly new for us within the last few months. There's nobody in this room that has all the answers. And the problem with the debate is it is engaged, both sides are engaged in what I call Facebook facts. And you know how accurate those are. Both sides are throwing those in. The important thing I would like everybody to look at in this resolution It's the line that says, now therefore be it resolved, the county board extends the emergency declaration issued by County Board Chair Jim Schrader on March 13, 2020, which presently in effect, the full power and effect determined that it will continue until July 14, 2020. One more month. So we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater for 1 month. Hopefully we have more real answers in a month. But assuming we have all the answers now is not the right way to go.
Supervisor Smith had his hand up first. Supervisor Kennard.
Well, Supervisor David and I can agree that it's complicated. That I looked up what was actually said originally, and I think it was 2.2 million people would die, but that would be unlikely because it would require government to do nothing and the public to do nothing, which we're wearing masks, we're social distancing, we had the lockdown. So to say that somehow that number is an error, you know, we won't know how true it was. And to do something like herd immunity, we got 330 million people. If we went to 60%, that's 200 million. Assuming 20% of them or thereabouts end up in the hospital, you're talking about 40 million people. And maybe we'll end up with 800,000 people dead, or who knows what it would be. And to talk about Sweden, they've been in the paper saying they would think their policy different. When you compare them to Norway and Denmark, I'm not sure which one was which, but one had 10 times the death rate of one of the countries and 4.5 times the death rate of another country. So to think that we should just have this spread through our community and live with it, you know, I'm certainly not in favor of that. So I think it is complicated, and the more we can do to protect each other, the better off we're going to be.
Supervisor Kennard.
I kind of think we got off the track. To me, this is just about 1 month of the emergency declaration. The question I had was, in the executive summary, it talks about phase 1 of going back to normal. Is that anywhere in this resolution here to continue? I guess other than it's in there, but I didn't see anywhere where we were talking anywhere else. There's none of the whereases or whatever says that we're going to take phase 1 and institute that.
So this copy that you have in front of you does not include the cross-off wordings. So the previous declaration, there's wording basically to the effect of the county administrator is authorized to use fund balance and contingency funds with some level of oversight by the finance committee. Those were the extraordinary matters that we had pulling back from the financial policies, because those are very broad. Contingency is pretty hefty. Fund balance is much more heftier. And in my opinion, part of the reason I wanted to start going back is because I thought we're in a position that needs to start going back to the elected officials. So that wording was not shown here as being crossed off, but that was the main part of this initial phase to start to pull some of those powers back to the committees.
Any other questions or discussion? Supervisor Jacob.
Yes, I was actually in the finance committee this morning. I voted for the continuance of this, but I have a couple of, I don't want to say questions and comments. First comment was for the previous one, health department. You know, I was going to vote against it, but I'm glad the postponement happened the way it did. My comments were pretty well laid out by Mr. Morris and Mr. Rodgers, and a lot more added to it by Mr. David. the question that I don't think I got out of Ben this morning, when I don't know if I asked it, do it at the meeting. By continuing this resolution, does it guarantee us any more security on actually receiving funds if the state gives us or gives more funds? That's where I have my reservations on continuing that, because we've already implemented the emergency plan. And if by just continuing this, making somebody feel good, doesn't guarantee us that, because I know you said there was a lot of goal, or a lot of, they keep moving the goals of what they're gonna pay for and not. Gives me great reservations to vote for this if it does not give us any kind of guarantee that we're gonna recoup the funds that we're spending to do this. I mean, we've spent a pretty good chunk already, as you guys showed us this morning in the finance committee. I think there's pushing $500 and some $1,000 that, you know, are COVID related. And in that aspect, I guess that's where I can't quite support this as it stands right now. Thank you.
So to clarify that, I cannot guarantee you today either direction, if we have the declaration in place, what that means for reimbursement, and that's going to be required. We are getting different guidance on what that might look like as we look for reimbursement. The U.S. Treasury is continuing to change or update their guidance to the state, and the state is trying to react to the dollars that are being allocated. So as part of the CARES Act, the state of Wisconsin was received about $2 billion, give or take a little bit. The governor announced about 2 weeks ago now that local governments will receive approximately $200 million. Of that, $10 million is going to Native American tribes, and each town, village, city, and county will get minimum $5,000, but in essence, they're distributed by pro rata share. Our pro rata share is about $1.375 million. The guidelines for utilization of those dollars are very restricted right now from what we've been told. There's still a lot more going back and forth. So back to Supervisor Jacob's point, right now we're working through rules that are still being written. On Monday, WCA hosted a conference call with the county executives and administrators that we do every Monday. On that call were members from DOA and the governor's office. And they gave some highlights, but they will not give us anything in writing yet. So that kind of tells us where we're at. So I can't say here today from you as a body to say we need to have this. I also can't say if we don't have it, what the impacts might be. That allocation we have, for the most part, is guaranteed to us as long as we fall within the parameters of those requirements. But there's other funds that are out there, such as FEMA, that we're working through as well. So I know that's not 100% accuracy, but I can't tell you either way.
Anyone else? Supervisor Winnie.
I'm going to be very brief because we've been talking about this a whole lot longer than I thought would be possible. And also because my colleague, Amy Bernard, said almost everything that needed to be said right off. The reason we should support this is simple. Because we're elected, each of us elected to be prudent and cautious and do things with some foresight. And that's what we're trying to do here. This resolution is different than the ones we passed before. And the reason was because we're trying to phase out of this, to take away some of the authority that we granted our county administrator, which was at his suggestion. And to show the public that yes, we've been cautious, but now is the time to move out of this. And instead we're talking about hydroxychloroquine. That's how I was.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Anyone else? Supervisor Davis.
made a few notes, but I don't know. I don't think I'm going to talk about those really. I just had a couple other comments to mention. You know, we become cogs in a wheel, and if the wheel's going the wrong direction, maybe the cog needs to stop and think about what it's doing. I just can't support this. I think the whole COVID-19 is a sham. It's there, it's a disease, but it's completely blown out of proportion. I'd love to sit down with people that are disagreeing with me and investigate. You bring your information, I bring my information. We sit there and we look at it like adults and try to figure out where the truth is and where the fiction is. I don't believe that our society and our community has the resilience to do what the lockdown has done and what social distancing is doing. Look at all the consequences that are happening. Look at the banking catastrophe that happened. How many jobs have been lost? How are people going to recover from that? The sooner we can end this thing, the sooner we can say that, yeah, it's a bad flu. It's maybe twice as bad as 2017, but it's not what they were predicting. The sooner we walk away from that and say that that is untrue, the better. One of the things that really disturbs me is how this has aligned itself on political lines. I mean, you can almost tell who votes in the Democratic and who votes in a Republican as a Republican just by the arguments and what we're going to see happen in a couple minutes. I find that really disturbing that this pandemic has become a partisan issue so terribly so. And then that really strange thing about that, I'm on the wrong side all of a sudden. And that's different than it's ever happened before, really. So I don't know. It's just such a complex conundrum we are against. But I can no longer support that because I, in my heart, feel that it's a farce. The quicker we walk away from it, the better off our society and country is going to be.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Supervisor Zacher.
Speaking about the virus, I'm one of the guys who's very susceptible. I'm in my 84th year. When this thing started, I have 5 nurses in my family, between my daughters-in-law, and granddaughters. So you understand the pressure I was under, which was good. They wouldn't allow me to leave the house. They brought my groceries. They ran our errands. And my wife wouldn't leave the house for 2 months. I believe what the experts are saying. I listen to Dr. Fauci and Dr. Burke, and I feel they know what's happening and they know what's best for us. And forget what the politicians say, because personally, they don't know anything about a disease to start with. They're only looking for the financial welfare of the country. And it's time we start dealing with the needs of the people at the bottom, and not that 1 or 2% at the top that are getting billions of dollars for free. So I will support this, and I feel we should continue to do what we're doing with our masks and keeping space between us. I hadn't gotten a haircut for 3 months. And I began to look like Billy Graham. So finally I called my barber and I said, "Are you going to be wearing a mask when I come in?" He said, "Well, I sterilize my equipment between customers, but I don't wear a mask." Well, then I said, "I guess I won't be coming in." And he paused for a moment. He said, "I will wear a mask for you." So when I got there, he had this big black mask on. Prior to this, a few months ago, he was telling me about all the customers that he was losing, because most of his customers are elderly people who get our haircuts yet. The young people go to a hairdresser, they have them styled, or they shave their heads. So the old barbers are running out of customers. And so he realizes, hey, if I get this thing and die, soon I'll be part of the picture too. And I might still be, I don't know. But I will support this. I went through all the diseases as a kid, measles, chickenpox, and mumps. I had the measles twice. We had a red sticker put on our front door at that time that is the contagious house, do not enter. The health department came out to Jefferson County and did this. And I survived, fortunately. Some didn't. But anyway, I just wanted you to hear from somebody in the dangerous area.
Anyone else? Supervisor.
I'm fortunate in the fact that I have my oldest daughter is a doctor at Marshfield Clinic. My second daughter is a nurse at the VA in Milwaukee. And I can tell you, both of them, when they talked to me, said, be careful about COVID. So they know, they've seen it. They've seen people, especially at the VA in Milwaukee. My daughter in Milwaukee has seen veterans die from this. So it's real. And my daughter in Marshfield has seen young kids. She's a pediatrician. She has seen young kids that have had this. So it's a real thing. It's not something fake. It's there. And if we get it, you're going to know about it. So I'm going to go with the experts on this one.
Anyone else? Anyone else? So we have a motion on the floor. Does anybody? So we have a motion on the floor to pass our emergency declaration for one more month with a few pieces withdrawn concerning the financials that will go back to the finance committee as we have always done. And so, you have a question?
No, are you saying you want the motion?
The motion has already been done. Wait a second.
Okay.
So at this point, all in favor of the emergency declaration, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. I just have to have a roll call then.
Supervisor.
Supervisor Farina's on the phone right now too.
Okay. Thank you. Supervisor Jones.
Aye.
Supervisor Kelly.
Aye.
Supervisor David.
No.
Supervisor Teets. Oh yeah, he's absent. I'm sorry. Supervisor Brockler.
No.
Supervisor Herbst. Supervisor Morris. Supervisor Weinke.
Aye.
Supervisor Renard. Aye. Supervisor Zastro. Supervisor Johns.
Aye.
Supervisor Schmidt.
Aye.
Supervisor Martin. Supervisor Lund.
Aye.
Supervisor Nass.
Aye.
Supervisor Payne.
Aye.
Supervisor Coots.
Aye.
Supervisor White.
Aye.
Supervisor Drana.
No.
Okay. Thank you. Supervisor Backlund.
Aye.
Supervisor Kennard. Supervisor Paulson. Sorry. Supervisor Jacob. Supervisor Lindell. Supervisor Felker.
No.
Supervisor Fitzgerald. Supervisor Nealon.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz. Supervisor Roberts.
Aye.
and Supervisor Christensen.
I believe the ayes have it, so we'll remain exact until the next county board meeting as modified. Supervisor Bernard.
Resolution number 2020. Authorization for remote attendance. Whereas an emergency, namely the COVID-19 pandemic, has impacted and will continue to impact Jefferson County. And whereas then County Board Chair Jim Schrader issued an emergency declaration on March 13th, 2020, which has subsequently been ratified and continued by the Jefferson County Board on March 19th, April 21, May 12, and June 9, 2020. And whereas it is imperative that the governing bodies of the county have the ability to meet as required to maintain the operations of the county. And whereas the county administrator and staff have developed a process, procedure, and capabilities to facilitate remote attendance at county meetings in compliance with all applicable laws and allows for participation of board members, public, and staff by in-person and through remote practices. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Jefferson County Board authorizes the utilization of remote attendance at all county meetings held to facilitate the transaction of county business with minimal barriers to participation of members of boards, commissions, committees, and facilitate ability for public transparency. This broadly construed policy shall be in place until rescinded by the county board or is superseded by an updated remote attendance policy. Fiscal note, the remote technology used capitalizes on hardware and infrastructure the county has in place pre-COVID-19. The Zoom software system utilized was purchased on a countywide basis to facilitate meetings and ongoing operations. Total cost was $1,999 for a one-year subscription with 10 host accounts and allows for up to 300 participants per meeting. This may be an eligible cost that may be reimbursed back to the county. I move approval of this resolution.
Second was by Supervisor Smith or Supervisor Christensen. Supervisor Christensen was the second. Any discussion? Any discussion on this resolution? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
One no. The resolution passes. Finance Committee. Supervisor Jones.
Resolution number 2028, accepting the Birth of Three Program Innovation and Social Development, Emotional Development Grant funding through the State of Wisconsin Department of Health Services, the Human Service Department. Executive summary. Jefferson County Human Services was recently awarded a grant from the State of Wisconsin Department of Health Services to fund projects that support the implementation of evidence-based practices and system changes to improve social, emotional outcomes for enrolled children. The county will receive a grant in the amount of $54,005.50 to fund the implementation of the Brazelton Touchpoints training. This training will be provided to Jefferson County, Dodge County, and contracted staff. A Jefferson County staff member will also become a certified trainer and provide training to community partners. On June 9th, 2020, the Finance Committee reviewed the request from the Human Service Director and recommended forwarding this resolution to the County Board to accept the grant funding of $54,005.50 and create a budget amendment. Fiscal note, the Birth of Three Program Innovation and Social Emotional Development Grant is run until December 31, 2021. Jefferson County received reimbursement for costs incurred in the 2020 and the 2021. Please see the attached budget adjustment or amendment request form for the proposed adjustment to the 2020 budget. This is a budget amendment. County Board approval requires a 2/3 vote of the entire membership of the County Board, 20 votes of the 30-member County Board. Grant funds not then expended during 2020 will be incorporated into the Human Services 2021 budget. Mr. Chair, I move for passage of this resolution.
With a second from Supervisor Broadway. Any discussion? Any discussion? Supervisor Smith.
Is there a downside to this?
No. No.
No. Anybody finance committee that's?
All right.
It's all good. Yeah. Any other questions? Any questions, discussion? All in favor of this resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, passed. Supervisor Jones.
Resolution number 2029, disallowing claim of Lincoln Keyser. The claim has been made against Jefferson County for damages. The claim has been reviewed by the county insurance carrier Women and was recommended for disallowance based on the findings that the county has no liability for this claim and is not legally responsible for alleged damages. This resolution formally denies the claim filed against the Jefferson County and directs the Corporation Council to give the claimant notice of disallowance. The Finance Committee met on May 14, 2020 and recommended forwarding this resolution to the County Board for approval. Fiscal note, this matter has been referred to Wisconsin Municipal Mutual Insurance Company, Women, and will be resolved in accordance with the terms of the county policy. Mr. Chair, I move for passage of this resolution.
Motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Johns. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of resolution 2029, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. It passes. Supervisor Jacob.
Select the honorable members of the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors. Jefferson County Planning and Zoning Committee again considers petitions to amend the official zoning map of Jefferson County filed for public hearing held on April 23rd and on May 22nd, 21st, 2020, as required by law pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute, given and being duly advised of the wishes of the town boards and persons in the areas affected, hereby makes the following recommendations. Approval petitions as listed. Date this the 26th day of May 2020, Lane Paulson Secretary. In terms of ordinance number 2024, official zoning map. Heretofore been petitioned to amend the official zoning map of Jefferson County, where petitions as listed were referred to Jefferson County Zoning Committee for public hearing on April 23rd, and other petitions as listed for public hearing on May 21st. And whereas the proposed amendments have been given due consideration by the Board of Supervisors in open session, now therefore be ordained that Jefferson County Board of Supervisors does amend the official zoning map of Jefferson County as follows. I move for adoption of this ordinance.
Second by Mr. Paulson. Mr. Kennard.
I need to abstain from the conflict.
Let the record show that Supervisor Kennard is abstaining. Any discussion? Any discussion, questions, discussion? All in favor of this ordinance, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the ordinance passes. Supervisor Jacob.
Resolution 2020. Resolution amending Jefferson County Comprehensive Plan for Agricultural Preservation Land Use Farmland Preservation Plan approved on May 26, 2020 by the Planning and Zoning Committee. I won't read it all because it's pretty self-explanatory, and our friend from the town of Oakland kind of came and explained a little bit about it in the public comment. I will move for passage of this resolution.
Second from Supervisor Paulson. Any further discussion, questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passes.
Come to ordinance number 2020-05, 5, ordinance adopting a map amendment to Jefferson County Comprehensive Plan and Agricultural Preservation Land Use Plan, farmland preservation. Whereas the town of Oakland requested the county to amend the Comprehensive Plan and Agricultural Preservation and Land Use Plan, and whereas the Planning and Zoning Committee adopted the public participation plan on March 10th, 2020 to guide the process of amending the plan, whereas the map amendment is outlined more depth in the resolution 2020. Whereas duly noticed public hearing for planning and zoning committee was held on May 21st, 2020, and the public hearing of the county board was held on June 10th. June 9th. This person ordinance here. Yep. And whereas the planning and zoning committee recommends adoption of the map amendment to the comprehensive plan and agricultural preservation plan land use plan on May 26, 2020. Now, therefore, here ordaining that pursuant to Wisconsin statute 66, 1001, and chapter 91 of the Jefferson County Comprehensive Plan and Jefferson County Agricultural Preservation and Land Use Plan be amended to change PIN numbers as listed from farmland preservation to 15-year growth area is hereby adopted. There is no fiscal impact. Move for adoption of this ordinance.
Discussed by Supervisor Paulson. Any further discussion? Questions? Seeing none, all in favor of this ordinance, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Now we have appointments by county administrator.
In virtue of the authority vested in section 69.18, parent 2, parent B of the Wisconsin statute, I respectfully request confirmation of the following appointment. Ms. Patricia Cicero is the Land and Water Conservation Director for an interim term. For those who do not know, Patricia has been serving in the role as interim director for almost the past year as we've looked at structure, et cetera. And she's done an outstanding job of moving us forward. We got a lot of great conversations that we look to the future. So I wholeheartedly support this moving forward if we're taking on this role on a permanent basis, not just interim basis. Sure.
Move to confirm, second.
Move to confirm by Supervisor Dodger. The second was by Supervisor Morris. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? None. You are confirmed. Thank you, Patricia. Appointment by County Board Chair by virtue of authority vested in section 59.548. I hereby request confirmation of the following appointment. Kathy Marr, Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, to the Historic Sites Preservation Council for a term ending April 19, 2022. Do I have a motion? By Supervisor Schultz. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Appointments by the Human Service Board. By virtue of authority vested in the Human Services Board under section 3.06 1G of the County Board Rules, the Human Service Board hereby requests the County Board's confirmation of the following appointments. Jeannie Tyler of Lake Mills, the Aging Disability Resource Center Advisory Committee, ADRC, for a 3-year term ending July 1st, 2023. And Carol O'Neill, Johnson Strick, Wisconsin, to the Nutrition Project Council for a 3-year term ending July 1st, 2023. I will entertain a motion to approve the appointments. So moved by Supervisor Morris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Smith. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Do we have any public comment of a general nature? Public comment of a general nature? None? I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Whoever you want to get for that second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
Yeah.